The ocean's surface may seem calm, but some of nature's most efficient predators lie beneath it. Shark attacks often strike without warning, turning peaceful dives, family swims, or offshore jobs into sudden fights for survival. Whether a yoga session is shattered by a great white or a fatal encounter just meters from shore, each story is a haunting reminder of the ocean's untamed power. In this video, we uncover 6 chilling encounters with apex predators. From a drilling crew ambushed near Namibia to a surfer mauled mid-session in Western Australia, watch the stories unfold. The waters off Lüderitz, Namibia, had always been unforgiving. Located along the harsh Atlantic coastline where the cold Benguela current meets the African shore, this small port town had witnessed centuries of maritime struggles. German colonial buildings still dotted the landscape, remnants of diamond mining operations that once defined the region. In July 2025, the area had become a hub for offshore drilling activities, with several private companies establishing maintenance platforms roughly 12 nautical miles from shore. The convergence of deep ocean currents created an ecosystem rich in marine life, making it profitable for industry and unpredictably dangerous. Barnaby Clutterworth had worked offshore rigs for 15 years, but the Namibian waters still made him uneasy. The 38-year-old Aberdeen equipment specialist had seen enough of the ocean's temperament to respect its power. On the morning of July 5, 2025, he stood on the service platform of the drilling vessel Meridian Striker, preparing for what should have been a routine equipment inspection. The platform floated in relatively shallow waters, anchored above a seabed formation that required constant monitoring of the drilling apparatus below. His partner for the dive, Zelkowitz Brandenheimer, was a 29-year-old German technician who had joined the crew only 3 months earlier. Brandenheimer possessed confidence from technical training rather than experience, and was eager to prove himself in more challenging underwater assignments. The morning briefing indicated optimal conditions: clear visibility, moderate current, and water temperature of 18 degrees Celsius. The crew had noticed unusual activity around the platform over the past week. Schools of yellowtail and sardines had been congregating near the underwater supports, creating what marine observers called a bait ball effect. This phenomenon typically attracted larger predators, but the crew had grown accustomed to the occasional seal or dolphin investigation. What they had not anticipated was the massive great white shark that had been following their vessel since dawn. Clutterworth and Brandenheimer suited up in their diving gear, checking their buoyancy vests and communication systems. The plan was straightforward: descend 30 meters to inspect the primary stabilization anchors, document any coral growth or structural wear, and return to the surface within 45 minutes. Both men were tethered to the platform by safety lines, a standard precaution that had prevented numerous accidents over the years. As they entered the water, visibility proved excellent. Brandenheimer descended first, his enthusiasm evident in his quick movements toward the anchor assembly. Clutterworth followed more cautiously, scanning the surrounding area out of habit. The platform's underwater supports created an artificial reef structure, and small fish darted between the metal beams in colorful displays. Approximately 15 minutes into their inspection, Clutterworth noticed a shadow moving beyond the edge of his vision. At first, he attributed it to cloud cover affecting the sunlight penetration, but something about the movement pattern seemed deliberate. He tapped his communication device to alert Brandenheimer, who was focused on photographing potential corrosion areas. The great white shark appeared with terrifying suddenness. Measuring nearly 5 meters in length, it emerged from the deeper water with the kind of predatory intent that millions of years of evolution had perfected. Its massive bulk cut through the water with deceptive grace, and its black eyes fixed on the 2 divers with unmistakable purpose. Clutterworth barely had time to register the threat before the shark struck. It rammed into Brandenheimer with tremendous force, its snout connecting with the younger man's torso and sending him tumbling through the water. The impact alone would have been enough to disorient most people, but the shark's attack was far from finished. The great white's jaws clamped down on Brandenheimer's buoyancy vest and upper arm. The vest's reinforced material provided some protection, but the shark's serrated teeth found purchase in the flesh of his arm. Brandenheimer's body went rigid with shock and pain as the predator shook him like a toy, the way sharks instinctively attempt to incapacitate their prey. Clutterworth reacted with the kind of desperate clarity that emerges in life-threatening situations. He swam toward his colleague, grabbing a metal inspection tool from his equipment belt. However, as he approached, the shark released Brandenheimer and turned its attention to this new potential threat. The massive fish circled with frightening speed, its dorsal fin cutting through the water as it assessed whether to attack again. Blood began to cloud the water around Brandenheimer, who was struggling to maintain consciousness while clutching his wounded arm. The metallic scent would only heighten the shark's aggressive state, and Clutterworth knew they had precious little time before the situation became fatal. Above the platform, the deck crew monitored the dive through the surface communication system. When Clutterworth's panicked reports came through, they immediately began emergency retrieval procedures. The hydraulic winch system engaged, and both safety lines began reeling at maximum speed. The shark made one final approach as the divers were being hauled upward. It lunged toward Brandenheimer's legs but missed as the safety line jerked him higher in the water column. Within minutes, both men were pulled onto the platform deck, where emergency medical protocols were immediately implemented. Brandenheimer survived the attack, but required extensive surgery to repair the deep lacerations and muscle damage in his arm. The incident prompted immediate operational changes, including mandatory shark spotters and revised safety procedures for all regional underwater activities. The Red Sea coastline near Hurghada, Egypt, has been a beacon for international tourism since the 1980s. This once modest fishing village transformed into a bustling resort destination, renowned for its crystal-clear waters, vibrant coral reefs, and year-round sunshine. By 2019, Hurghada welcomed over 1 million visitors annually, drawn by the promise of pristine beaches and world-class diving opportunities. The city's crescent-shaped bay provided natural protection from rough seas, creating an illusion of safety that marine predators had rarely challenged. The local fishing industry had operated from these waters for generations, with traditional feluccas sharing space alongside modern resort developments. Fish cleaning stations dotted the shoreline, where daily catches were processed and waste was disposed of directly into the sea. While economically necessary for local fishermen, this practice created an ongoing attraction for marine scavengers and predators that few tourists understood or anticipated. Fatima Hassan had brought her 2 young children to Hurghada for what was meant to be a peaceful family vacation in August 2019. The 34-year-old mother from Cairo worked as a government clerk and had saved for months to afford this seaside retreat. Her children, 8-year-old Amara and 6-year-old Khalil, had never experienced swimming in the sea before, having grown up along the Nile River, where supervised swimming was the norm. The family had chosen a popular public beach area, approximately 2 kilometers south of the main resort strip. This section attracted predominantly local families and budget-conscious tourists, offering the same pristine waters without the premium pricing of private hotel beaches. The morning of August 15th presented ideal conditions: calm seas, 32 degrees Celsius temperature, and gentle offshore breezes that kept the beach comfortable despite the summer heat. Fatima had been cautious about allowing her children into the water, insisting they remain close to shore, where the depth barely reached her waist. She positioned herself between the children and the deeper water, maintaining constant visual contact as they played in the shallows. Other families populated the beach, creating a sense of communal safety that masked the presence of a significant threat lurking just beyond the swimming area. The persistent scent trail from nearby fish cleaning operations drew the tiger shark to the area. This apex predator had been patrolling the coastal waters for several days, measuring approximately 4 meters in length and weighing an estimated 300 kilograms. Tiger sharks are known for aggressive behavior and opportunistic feeding patterns, making them particularly dangerous in shallow water environments where humans recreate. The attack commenced without warning or visible provocation. Fatima had been helping Khalil adjust his inflatable armbands when the shark struck with devastating speed. Its powerful jaws clamped down on her left arm, immediately dragging her beneath the surface. The impact sent a shockwave through the surrounding water, alerting nearby swimmers to the unfolding crisis. Amara and Khalil witnessed their mother disappear underwater in a violent thrashing motion that defied their understanding. Their screams pierced the afternoon calm, drawing immediate attention from other beachgoers who initially assumed the children were engaging in typical play behavior. Within seconds, however, the water around Fatima began turning crimson, creating an unmistakable signature of a predatory attack. The shark maintained its grip on Fatima for nearly 30 seconds, shaking her body with the force designed to incapacitate large prey. When she finally surfaced, gasping and disoriented, her arm showed devastating trauma. Deep lacerations exposed bone and severed muscle tissue, while arterial bleeding created an expanding cloud of blood that further stimulated the predator's aggressive state. As Fatima struggled to reach the shallows, the tiger shark redirected its attention toward the children. Khalil had moved deeper into the water, attempting to get his mother despite his limited swimming ability. The shark approached with renewed determination, its dorsal fin cutting through the surface as it closed the distance. The second attack proved fatal. The shark's jaws encompassed Khalil's torso, inflicting massive trauma to his chest and abdomen. Other swimmers had begun responding to the emergency, throwing beach chairs and shouting, but their efforts proved insufficient to deter the predator. The attack lasted only minutes before the shark retreated to deeper waters, leaving behind a scene of devastation that would haunt the witnesses permanently. Emergency responders arrived within 15 minutes of the initial attack. Fatima was pulled from the water unconscious, having lost substantial blood from her injuries. Khalil was recovered by local divers who had witnessed the attack from a nearby fishing boat. Despite immediate resuscitation attempts, he showed no signs of life. Fatima was transported to a hospital, where trauma surgeons worked for 6 hours attempting to repair the extensive damage to her arm and treat severe blood loss. Her condition remained critical for 4 days before complications from infection and organ failure led to her death on August 19, 2019. Amara survived the attack physically unharmed, but psychologically traumatized. She was taken into the care of relatives from Cairo, who later pursued legal action against local authorities for inadequate warning systems regarding marine predators. The incident investigation revealed several tiger sharks had been spotted in the area during the preceding week, but no official warnings were issued to beach users. The attack prompted immediate changes to local safety protocols. Fish cleaning operations were relocated further from public swimming areas, and a shark warning system was implemented across all major beaches in the Hurghada region. Marine biologists conducted extensive studies of predator behavior patterns, leading to seasonal restrictions on certain water activities during peak shark activity periods. The tragedy shocked Egypt's tourism industry and led to comprehensive reviews of marine safety standards across all Red Sea resort destinations. Memorial services for Fatima and Khalil were held in both Cairo and Hurghada, attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the senseless loss of life in what should have been a place of recreation and joy. The coastal town of Hermanus, South Africa, has earned international recognition as one of the world's premier whale-watching destinations. Nestled along the Western Cape's dramatic coastline, this former fishing village transformed into a sophisticated tourist hub while maintaining its connection to marine wildlife. During their annual migration, Walker Bay's protected waters provided ideal conditions for southern right whales. Still, these same nutrient-rich waters also supported a complex food chain that included some of the ocean's most formidable predators. By 2022, Hermanus had developed a thriving wellness tourism industry. Yoga retreats, meditation centers, and holistic health practitioners attracted visitors seeking both spiritual renewal and adventure. The combination of pristine natural beauty and abundant marine life created an irresistible draw for those looking to connect with nature in meaningful ways. Stand-up paddleboard yoga has become particularly popular, offering practitioners the unique experience of maintaining balance while floating on the open ocean. Clara Jensen, a 31-year-old yoga instructor from Cape Town, had been conducting sunrise paddleboard sessions for 3 years. Her traditional yoga and water sports background suited her for this specialized instruction. Clara possessed the kind of calm confidence from hundreds of hours spent on the water, understanding its therapeutic potential and inherent risks. She had built a loyal following among locals and tourists, who appreciated her emphasis on mindfulness and safety. The morning of September 12, 2022, presented exceptional conditions for outdoor yoga practice. The pre-dawn air temperature registered a comfortable 18 degrees Celsius, while the ocean remained unusually calm following several days of offshore winds. Clara had scheduled a sunrise session for 6 experienced participants, planning to paddle approximately 150 meters from shore, where the water depth reached 8 meters and the seafloor dropped into the deeper Atlantic. Great white sharks had been increasingly active in the area throughout the southern hemisphere's winter months. Marine biologists attributed this pattern to shifting prey distribution, particularly the seal colonies that migrated along this stretch of coastline. The sharks followed these food sources, creating seasonal hotspots of predatory activity that often coincided with popular recreational areas. Clara's group launched their paddleboards at 6:15 in the morning, just as the eastern horizon began showing the first hints of sunrise. The participants ranged in age from 25 to 58, all possessing intermediate to advanced paddleboard experience. They had completed similar sessions with Clara multiple times, developing trust in her judgment and expertise regarding local conditions. The group paddled in formation toward their designated practice area, maintaining proximity for safety. Clara led from the front, periodically checking behind to ensure all participants remained comfortable with the conditions. The water clarity was exceptional, allowing clear visibility to depths of several meters, which typically provided early warning of any marine life encounters. Upon reaching their practice location, the group arranged their boards in a loose circle formation. Clara began the session with basic breathing exercises designed to help participants center themselves while adapting to the gentle motion of the swells. The sunrise created spectacular lighting conditions, with golden rays beginning to penetrate the water surface and illuminate the underwater environment. 20 minutes into the session, Clara transitioned the group into standing poses. She demonstrated a warrior pose variation adapted for paddleboard practice, emphasizing the importance of engaging core muscles to maintain stability. The participants followed her lead, gradually building confidence as they progressed through increasingly challenging positions. Clara was executing a standing forward fold when the attack occurred. She had shifted her weight toward the front of the board, extending her arms downward in a graceful diving motion that inadvertently created a silhouette resembling injured prey. The great white shark, measuring approximately 4.5 meters in length, had been cruising beneath the group for several minutes, investigating these unusual surface disturbances. The shark struck with explosive force, erupting from the water and slamming into Clara's paddleboard with enough momentum to launch her completely airborne. The impact shattered the board's fiberglass construction, sending fragments flying in multiple directions. Clara crashed into the water approximately 3 meters from her original position, disoriented and struggling to understand what had just occurred. Before she could fully process the situation, the shark attacked again. Its massive jaws clamped down on her upper thigh, penetrating deep into the muscle tissue and causing immediate, enormous trauma. The serrated teeth tore through skin, fat, and muscle layers, creating wounds that began bleeding profusely into the surrounding water. Clara's survival instincts engaged despite the shock and pain. She struck the shark's snout with her fists while simultaneously attempting to push away from its powerful body. The predator maintained its grip for approximately 15 seconds before releasing her and disappearing into the depths, apparently satisfied that she was not its preferred prey species. The other participants had witnessed the entire attack sequence and immediately initiated emergency response procedures. 2 of them paddled rapidly toward Clara, while the others began signaling for assistance from shore. Clara managed to grab onto a piece of her broken paddleboard, using it for flotation, while fighting to remain conscious despite significant blood loss. The rescue operation unfolded with remarkable efficiency. A nearby fishing boat had observed the commotion and altered course to assist. The Hermanus Rescue Services also monitored the yoga session through binoculars as part of standard safety protocols. Emergency medical personnel were dispatched before Clara even reached shore. Clara was pulled from the water within 8 minutes of the attack. Emergency medical technicians immediately applied pressure bandages to control bleeding while assessing the extent of her injuries. The shark's bite had caused deep lacerations, extending from her hip to mid-thigh, with significant damage to the quadriceps muscle group and surrounding connective tissue. She was transported by ambulance to a trauma center in Cape Town, where orthopedic surgeons worked for 4 hours to repair the damaged tissue. The surgical team successfully preserved the integrity of her femur and major blood vessels, though extensive rehabilitation would be required to restore full function to the affected leg. Clara's recovery extended over 18 months and included multiple reconstructive surgeries, intensive physical therapy, and psychological counseling to address the trauma associated with the attack. She eventually returned to teaching yoga, though exclusively on land, and became an advocate for improved marine safety education. The incident prompted significant changes to paddleboard yoga protocols in the Hermanus area. New regulations required shark spotters during all ocean-based activities, mandatory safety boats for group sessions, and seasonal restrictions during heightened great white shark activity. Clara's experience became a case study for marine recreation safety programs throughout South Africa. The coastline of Mozambique stretches for over 2,500 kilometers along the Indian Ocean, creating one of Africa's most extensive maritime frontiers. The waters off Inhambane province had sustained local fishing communities for centuries, with traditional dhow vessels sharing ancient trade routes alongside modern commercial operations. In 2017, this region represented opportunity and peril for subsistence fishermen who depended entirely on daily catches to support their families and communities. The Mozambique Channel, separating the mainland from Madagascar, creates a unique marine ecosystem where warm tropical currents mix with deeper oceanic waters. This convergence produces exceptional biodiversity, but concentrates aggressive predator species, including bull sharks, known for their territorial behavior and willingness to attack in shallow coastal areas. Local fishermen had learned to respect these waters through generations of inherited knowledge, though modern economic pressures sometimes forced them to take calculated risks. João Silva had been fishing these waters for 23 years, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, who had worked the same coastal areas since the 1960s. The 45-year-old fisherman operated a modest wooden vessel with his 2 cousins, targeting species like kingfish, barracuda, and red snapper that commanded reasonable prices in the local markets. His reputation for reliability and seamanship had earned him respect among the fishing community of Maxiques, a small port town that served as the regional hub for maritime commerce. The morning of October 8, 2017, presented typical conditions for the transitional season between dry and wet periods. Water temperatures had reached 26 degrees Celsius, while moderate southeastern winds created manageable wave conditions for small boat operations. João's vessel, the Santa Maria, carried 3 crew members and sufficient net capacity for a full day's fishing in waters approximately 8 kilometers offshore. João's fishing strategy focused on areas where underwater topography created natural fish aggregation points. Rocky outcroppings and coral formations provided shelter for smaller species, attracting the predatory fish that represented the most valuable catches. These locations required precise navigation and intimate knowledge of seasonal patterns that could only be acquired through years of experience. The crew had deployed their nets in a promising location where previous expeditions had yielded substantial catches. The technique involved setting a large, circular net and gradually drawing it closed while the boat moved in a tightening spiral pattern. This method, known locally as Circo, required coordination between all crew members and typically took 45 minutes to complete properly. Bull sharks had been increasingly active in the area due to seasonal changes in prey distribution. The warming water temperatures triggered migrations of smaller fish species, creating temporary concentrations that attracted larger predators. Bull sharks, unlike many other shark species, can tolerate brackish water and often venture into coastal areas where fishing activities are most concentrated. João was positioned at the vessel's stern, manually hauling in the weighted bottom portion of the net. This physically demanding task required him to lean over the side of the boat, with his arms and upper body extending into the water as he gathered the net's contents. His cousins, Ernesto and Miguel, operated the boat's position and managed the upper portion of the net from the opposite side. The attack occurred with terrifying suddenness. The bull shark, measuring approximately 3 meters long and weighing an estimated 200 kilograms, followed the fishing operation from below. The disturbance caused by the net, combined with the scent of trapped fish, had attracted the predator's attention and triggered its aggressive response. The shark's initial strike targeted João's right thigh as he leaned over the boat's edge. Its powerful jaws clamped down with crushing force, immediately penetrating through muscle and striking bone. The impact was so violent that it nearly pulled João out of the boat, saved only by his grip on the net rigging and his cousin's immediate response. Ernesto and Miguel grabbed João's arms and torso, attempting to pull him back into the boat while the shark maintained its grip. The predator's natural response was to thrash and roll, a behavior designed to disorient prey and tear away manageable pieces of flesh. This action greatly strained João's body and made the rescue attempt extremely dangerous for all involved. The struggle continued for nearly 2 minutes, with the shark refusing to release its hold despite the crew's desperate efforts. Blood began pouring into the water, creating a feeding stimulus that only intensified the shark's aggressive behavior. Miguel struck the shark's head with a gaff hook, while Ernesto continued pulling on João's upper body, but the predator's grip remained unbreakable. Eventually, the bull shark's natural feeding pattern caused it to adjust its bite, momentarily loosening its hold. This brief opportunity allowed the cousins to pull João partially back into the boat, though the shark immediately re-engaged, this time targeting his lower leg. The second bite caused additional severe trauma before the shark finally released him and disappeared beneath the surface. João had sustained massive injuries to both his thigh and lower leg. The shark's teeth had severed major blood vessels, damaged bone structures, and created deep lacerations that were bleeding profusely. Despite his cousin's immediate first aid efforts, including pressure bandages made from torn clothing, João was losing blood at an alarming rate. The nearest medical facility was in Inhambane, approximately 40 minutes away by boat under optimal conditions. Ernesto immediately started the engine and began racing toward shore, while Miguel continued applying pressure to João's wounds. However, the severity of the trauma and the delay in reaching professional medical care created insurmountable challenges. João lost consciousness during the return journey and never regained consciousness. His cousins delivered him to the provincial hospital, where emergency physicians confirmed his death from massive blood loss and traumatic shock. The medical examination revealed that the shark's bite had severed the femoral artery, creating wounds that would have been difficult to treat, even under ideal circumstances. The incident sent shockwaves through the local fishing community, which relied on these waters for economic survival. João's death represented not only a personal tragedy for his family, but also a stark reminder of the dangers faced by artisanal fishermen who lacked access to modern safety equipment and emergency medical services. Local authorities conducted an investigation that confirmed the attack had been perpetrated by a bull shark, based on the pattern and size of the bite wounds. Marine biologists noted that bull shark encounters were becoming more frequent due to increased fishing pressure and environmental changes affecting prey distribution patterns. The tragedy prompted discussions about improved safety measures for small-scale fishing operations, though economic realities limited the practical implementation of most recommendations. João's family received support from the fishing community, and his boat was eventually operated by his eldest son, who continued the family tradition despite the inherent risks involved in their chosen profession. By the early 2000s, the Margaret River region of Western Australia had established itself as one of the world's premier surfing destinations. Margaret River's surfing culture has evolved alongside technological advances, with drone photography becoming increasingly popular for documenting surf sessions and creating promotional content. By 2023, aerial filming had become standard practice for professional surfers and content creators seeking to capture unique perspectives of their performances. Mateo Reed, a 24-year-old professional surfer from Byron Bay, had traveled to Margaret River in March 2023 to film content for his social media channels and potential sponsorship opportunities. His surfing style combined technical precision with an aggressive approach that translated well to video content. Mateo had been competing on the professional circuit for 3 years, building a reputation for tackling challenging conditions that other surfers might avoid. The filming session was planned to take advantage of a significant swell system meteorologists predicted would produce 6 to 8 foot waves. These conditions represented the sweet spot for dramatic footage while remaining manageable for solo surfing in a remote location. Mateo's videographer, a local drone operator named James Fitzgerald, had extensive experience filming surfers in Australian waters and understood the creative possibilities and safety considerations involved. The chosen location was a break known locally as Bone Yards, approximately 2 kilometers north of the main Margaret River surf beach. This spot offered consistent waves during large swells, but remained relatively isolated due to its distance from convenient access points. The remoteness provided ideal conditions for uninterrupted filming and meant that emergency assistance would be significantly delayed in case of any incidents. Great white shark activity was elevated throughout the Margaret River region in the autumn of 2023. Marine biologists attributed this increase to seasonal migrations of fur seal populations, which represented primary prey for adult great whites. The sharks followed these food sources along the coastline, creating temporary hotspots of predatory activity, often coinciding with popular surfing locations. Mateo entered the water at approximately 7:30, just as the offshore winds cleaned up the wave faces for optimal riding conditions. The drone operator positioned himself on the clifftop overlooking the break, preparing to capture various angles and perspectives throughout the 2-hour filming session. The water clarity was exceptional, providing clear visibility to depths of several meters. The surfing session progressed successfully for the first hour, with Mateo completing several impressive rides while the drone captured footage from multiple angles and elevations. The combination of skilled surfing and dramatic natural scenery created content that would appeal to both surfing enthusiasts and general adventure sports audiences. The presence of the great white shark became apparent during the filming of Mateo's final wave sequence. The predator, measuring approximately 4.5 meters in length, investigated the drone's presence for several minutes. Great whites possess acute sensory systems that detect electromagnetic signals, and the drone's motors and electronic components may have triggered the curious predator's investigative behavior. As Mateo paddled back toward the lineup after completing his ride, the shark approached from the deeper water beyond the break. The drone footage captured when the massive predator emerged from a swell, its distinctive triangular dorsal fin cutting through the surface as it accelerated toward the unsuspecting surfer. The attack occurred with explosive violence that shocked both Mateo and the drone operator. The great white launched partially out of the water, its powerful jaws snapping down on the tail section of Mateo's surfboard. The impact shattered the fiberglass construction and sent fragments flying in multiple directions, while the force of the collision threw Mateo forward into the water. Before Mateo could fully comprehend what had happened, the shark struck again. This time, its jaws clamped down on his lower leg, penetrating through his wetsuit and into the muscle tissue of his calf. The serrated teeth created deep lacerations, while the shark's thrashing motion threatened to drag him underwater and away from any possible rescue. Despite the shock and intense pain, Mateo's survival instincts engaged. He struck at the shark's snout and gills with his fists while simultaneously kicking with his free leg. His actions and struggling movements convinced the predator that he was not suitable prey. After approximately 20 seconds, the shark released its grip and retreated toward deeper water. The immediate aftermath of the attack presented critical challenges for Mateo's survival. His surfboard had been destroyed, leaving him without flotation assistance, while the wounds on his leg were bleeding significantly. The drone operator had witnessed the entire sequence and immediately contacted emergency services, but the remote location meant that rescue would take considerable time to arrive. Matteo managed to grab onto a piece of his broken surfboard, using it for minimal flotation while attempting to swim toward shore. The distance to the beach was approximately 200 meters, but his injured condition and the persistent threat of the shark's return made this journey extremely perilous. Blood loss was beginning to affect his strength and coordination. Fortunately, 2 local surfers had observed the attack from a neighboring break and immediately paddled toward the scene. They reached Matteo within 5 minutes of the attack, providing crucial assistance that likely saved his life. One surfer allowed Matteo to hold onto his board, while the other positioned himself as a lookout for any sign of the shark's return. The rescue team worked together to bring Matteo to shore, where emergency medical personnel were waiting. Paramedics immediately began treating his injuries, which included deep lacerations to his calf muscle, puncture wounds from individual teeth, and significant blood loss. The wounds required immediate surgical intervention to prevent permanent damage to muscle and nerve function. Matteo was transported by helicopter to a hospital, where trauma surgeons worked for 6 hours to repair the extensive soft tissue damage. The surgical team successfully preserved the integrity of his major muscle groups and blood vessels, though extensive rehabilitation would be required to restore full function to his leg. The drone footage of the attack became a viral sensation, viewed millions of times across social media platforms and news outlets worldwide. The high-quality aerial perspective provided unprecedented documentation of a great white shark attack, offering valuable insights for marine biologists studying predator behavior patterns. Matteo's recovery extended over 14 months and included multiple follow-up surgeries, intensive physical therapy, and psychological counseling. He eventually returned to professional surfing, though he admitted that the experience had fundamentally changed his relationship with the ocean and his approach to risk assessment in remote locations. The incident contributed to ongoing discussions about drone usage in areas known for shark activity. Some researchers suggested that electromagnetic emissions from drone equipment might inadvertently attract or agitate marine predators. New safety protocols were developed for surf filming operations in Western Australia, emphasizing the importance of spotter networks and emergency response planning. The fjords of northern Norway had attracted marine wildlife enthusiasts for decades, offering some of the world's most reliable opportunities to observe orcas in their natural habitat. By 2021, whale watching tourism had become a significant economic driver for coastal communities, with operators running daily excursions from ports like Tromsø, Andenes, and Skjervøy during the peak season from November through February. The Norwegian Sea's orca populations had exhibited increasingly unusual behaviors since 2020, with multiple reports of aggressive interactions with recreational and commercial vessels. Marine biologists attributed these incidents to several factors, including increased boat traffic, changes in herring migration patterns, and possible territorial responses to human presence in traditional feeding areas. The phenomenon had attracted international attention from researchers studying cetacean behavior and human-wildlife conflict dynamics. Captain Lars Kristoffersen had been operating whale-watching tours for 12 years, building a reputation for ethical wildlife viewing practices and comprehensive safety protocols. His vessel, the Aurora Borealis, was a 15-meter catamaran designed specifically for marine wildlife observation, equipped with hydrophones, underwater cameras, and educational facilities for passenger instruction. Kristoffersen possessed extensive knowledge of local orca behavior patterns and had never experienced aggressive encounters during his previous operations. On November 18, 2021, the tour group comprised 15 passengers representing a diverse international mix of wildlife photographers, marine biology students, and general tourism enthusiasts. Among them were Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a marine mammal researcher, and professional wildlife photographer Niels Andersen, who had documented Arctic marine life for publications. The group had specifically chosen this tour operator based on recommendations for responsible wildlife viewing practices. Weather conditions on the morning of departure appeared optimal for whale watching activities. The air temperature registered -2 degrees Celsius, while sea conditions remained calm, with excellent visibility extending beyond 10 kilometers. The forecast predicted stable conditions throughout the day, with light northerly winds that would create minimal surface disturbance for wildlife observation and photography. The Aurora Borealis departed Skjervøy Harbor at 8:30 a.m., heading toward feeding areas where orcapods had been consistently reported during the previous week. The journey to the primary observation zone required approximately 90 minutes of navigation through increasingly dramatic fjord landscapes, with towering snow-covered peaks creating a spectacular backdrop for the marine wildlife encounter. Kristoffersen located the first orcapod approximately 20 kilometers northwest of the departure point. Sonar readings indicated substantial herring concentrations at depths between 50 and 80 meters. The initial sighting included at least 12 individual orcas engaged in coordinated feeding behavior, creating this spectacular display representing the ultimate goal for whale-watching expeditions. The orcas initially displayed typical feeding patterns, with the pod working together to corral herring schools, using sophisticated hunting techniques refined over thousands of years. Passengers observed tail slapping, echolocation calls, and synchronized diving patterns that demonstrated the complex social intelligence of these marine mammals. Dr. Mitchell noted that the pod's behavior appeared completely normal during the first 30 minutes of observation. The situation changed dramatically when a large male orca, identifiable by his distinctive 6-foot dorsal fin and unique saddle patch markings, separated from the feeding group and began approaching the Aurora Borealis deliberately. Kristoffersen initially interpreted this as curiosity-driven behavior, which was common during whale-watching encounters, and maintained the vessel's position while instructing passengers to remain calm and avoid sudden movements. The male orca's approach escalated into increasingly aggressive displays. He began swimming in tight circles around the boat, creating powerful wake disturbances that rocked the vessel significantly. His vocalizations, clearly audible through the hull, became more intense and frequent, suggesting heightened agitation or territorial assertion. Other pod members joined this behavior, creating a coordinated harassment pattern not documented in previous research. The first physical contact occurred when the large male positioned himself directly beneath the boat's stern and delivered a powerful upward strike with his massive tail fluke. The impact resonated throughout the vessel's structure, causing passengers to grab handholds and prompting immediate concern about potential hull damage. Kristoffersen quickly assessed the boat's systems and confirmed no immediate safety threats, though the psychological impact on passengers was substantial. Additional pod members escalated the harassment by executing dramatic breaches within meters of the boat's sides. These displays, while spectacular from a wildlife viewing perspective, created dangerous conditions as several tons of orca body mass crashed back into the water, generating waves that threatened to destabilize the Aurora Borealis. Passengers ducked for cover as spray from these impacts soaked the observation deck. The most alarming incident occurred when the original male orca approached the boat's bow at high speed, appearing to ram the fiberglass hull with his rostrum deliberately. The collision created visible damage to the boat's paint and gel coat, while also producing a loud impact that could be heard throughout the vessel. This behavior suggested aggression that exceeded normal territorial displays and entered potentially dangerous territory. Dr. Mitchell recognized that the pod's behavior had become genuinely threatening and advised Kristoffersen to implement emergency protocols. The captain immediately shut down the boat's engines to avoid further provocation and activated the emergency radio to alert nearby vessels and marine authorities. The decision to cut power proved crucial, as engine noise and vibrations often trigger aggressive responses in stressed marine mammals. The standoff continued for nearly 45 minutes, with multiple orcas maintaining aggressive postures around the stationary vessel. Passengers remained silent, following instructions to minimize disturbance while documenting the unprecedented encounter through photography and video recording. Anderson captured extraordinary footage of the orca's facial expressions and body language, providing valuable data for subsequent behavioral analysis. The harassment gradually subsided as the orcas lost interest in the vessel. The pods slowly dispersed, returning to their previous feeding activities as if the aggressive encounter had never occurred. Christofferson waited an additional 20 minutes before carefully restarting the engines and beginning the return journey to port, maintaining radio contact with marine authorities throughout the transit. The incident prompted immediate investigation by Norwegian marine wildlife authorities and international cetacean research organizations. Analysis of the footage and passenger testimonies contributed to a growing database of unusual orca behaviors increasingly reported throughout northern European waters. The encounter led to revised guidelines for whale watching operations in Norwegian waters, including mandatory safety protocols for aggressive wildlife encounters and restrictions on approach distances during peak feeding periods.